Good afternoon, everyone. I'm JC, and this is Sacred Heart at Home on April 16th. Hope you're all doing well. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about. So, I have been spending a lot of time in this quarantine reading the news, which is a dangerous way to pass the time. Um, Particularly in the past few days, there's been a lot of news about the stimulus checks, being delayed because Donald Trump wanted his name printed on them. Now threatening to cut funding to the World Health Organization to try to distract attention from the nation's response. Weakened oversight of stimulus funding, so who knows if it's actually going to small businesses or what haven't. And I think just this whole experience of coronavirus and or COVID-19, and the pandemic and quarantine, I think has really taught us how interconnected our lives are and how much we have to work together and how we need each other, which I think is a deeply Catholic idea. And God comes to a people, God doesn't come to individuals. And so I think just sitting back and seeing particularly the current administration and just the levels of what it seems like just dishonesty and greed and manipulation and frankly corruption and self-dealing, the constant scapegoating of things like the World Health Organization, mocking experts, whatever the case may be, and not only exhibiting these values, but also like denigrating the parts of our government that are trying to like speak scientific truth and like work together to resolve the pandemic are being attacked by other people in the government. And an important part of our life together is leadership. It's part of our faith journey, right? We can't separate them, or at least my little 2 cents. And so as I've kind of sat here, just kind of feeling, sitting with feelings of like rising anger and frankly disgust at what's going on. And then also at the same, we're in the middle of a pandemic and still people are just acting so self-centeredly. These people who are elected to these positions to care for the nation are just, it does not appear that they are living up to that duty or obligation. And I find myself growing more angry and disgusted, but also powerless in the face of this, right? I'm not the government, right? And in the midst of all this, I noticed yesterday in the gospel reading, which was the disciples on the road to Emmaus, when Jesus appeared, this line stood out to me. The things that happened to Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, how our chief priests and rulers both handed him over to a sentence of death and crucified him. And that part had never really stuck out to me before. And I wonder if the disciples felt their own sense of betrayal by their leaders. The chief priests and the rulers who were there to ensure the well-being of the community, not only physically and materially, but also spiritually, did like the exact opposite and killed Jesus. And so I think this is part of our Easter hope as we move into Easter, which is a season of hope. It's a season of rebirth. And I think we've talked a lot about what that looks like in our personal lives. But I think it's important to remember that there's also hope in our community life, in our political life, in our life together. And I think it's important, the road to Emmaus, when Jesus does reveal himself, he points to something greater. He points to something beyond the current situation. And so I've just been reflecting on that hope and what that might mean. So I think today I would invite you to all join me in praying not only for our elected officials that they might feel moved to support the values our faith teach us, right? Not only of um, things like solidarity and care for the common good and, protecting the most marginalized and the most vulnerable members of society. But even more basic values, it seems like honesty, integrity, basic respect for human dignity. So praying that they might feel moved by these compassion, they might feel moved by these values. And also praying for our civil servants, people who are not elected, who are, scientists, who are public health officials, who are, you name it, but people who are in these roles and trying to use their expertise and their professional judgment to resolve the pandemic and make our country work. But more broadly than that, I would also invite us all to pray for all of us to kind of renew a spirit of solidarity and a care for our common home and for each other, not only on that individual person to person level, but also on these larger sort of macro levels, which I think is essential to our lives as Christians. So that's my thoughts for the day. I hope you are all staying well, and we will see you again tomorrow. Take care.